Have you ever stopped to think about what happens when a fight goes too far? We all know that boxing is brutal, a sport where every punch comes with the risk of irreversible damage. But what if a single moment in the ring haunted you for the rest of your life? Could you ever forgive yourself for what happened, even if it wasn't your intention? This is the story of two men, father and son, one of whom would come face to face with the ghost of his past, one that would change both of their lives forever. Let's start from the beginning. Chris Eubank, born in 1966, came into the world with a fierce determination. Raised in the gritty streets of London, he quickly learned that survival wasn't just about physical strength, it was about presence, about showing the world who you were before you even spoke a word. And Eubank, with his sharp suits and larger-than-life persona, was a man who understood the power of an image. As a child, Eubank grew up with a singular focus: to prove himself. Boxing was the answer, and it wasn't just about getting in the ring to fight. It was about creating an identity, an image that would separate him from the rest. His early years were marked by dedication, by the grinding hours spent perfecting his craft, until he reached the peak of British boxing. On the other side of the ring, we have Michael Watson, a quiet, reserved man compared to Eubank's flamboyant nature. Born in 1965, Watson's boxing style was as fluid as it was devastating. He was the opposite of Eubank in many ways: calm, collected, and strategic. Watson never sought the spotlight in the same way his rival did. But when he stepped into the ring, his skill was undeniable. In their first encounter, no one could predict what would happen. Eubank, the larger-than-life champion, squared off against the calm and calculating Watson. It was a brutal fight, a war of attrition that left fans on the edge of their seats. Eubank, in a controversial decision, narrowly defeated Watson, but the win wasn't without criticism. Many felt Watson had done enough to win, leaving the door open for a rematch, a fight that would go down in history for all the wrong reasons. September 21st, 1991, a day that would change both their lives forever. The atmosphere at White Hart Lane in London, England was electric. Fans packed into the stadium, their anticipation building for what was sure to be an epic showdown. This wasn't just about boxing anymore. This was about redemption, pride, proving who was the better man. The first round opened with both fighters giving their all, but it was clear from the start that something was different. Michael Watson, with a hunger in his eyes, came forward relentlessly. Eubank had never faced an opponent like this before, someone who could match his pace and aggression. Each round grew more punishing than the last, and by round 11, Watson was taking control. He had Eubank on the ropes, landing clean, powerful shots that sent Eubank reeling. The fight was slipping away from him, and it seemed like Watson was about to finish what he had started earlier that year. But then, in the dying moments of round 11, everything changed. In a moment of sheer desperation, Eubank launched a massive uppercut. The punch was brutal, sending Watson's head snapping back, and for the first time in his career, Eubank was on the canvas, shaken to his core. But in one last burst of energy, Eubank, against all odds, knocked Watson down. Watson, staggered and dazed, somehow made it to his feet and began the 12th round. But this would be the last round, the last moment of this brutal encounter. And painfully, Watson's last fight inside the boxing ring. What followed was a harrowing scene. Eubank, fueled by adrenaline and desperation, unleashed an onslaught that trapped Watson in the corner. The referee stepped in, stopping the fight in the very last round. Eubank celebrated his improbable victory, but it wasn't long before the true horror of the situation began to reveal itself. Watson collapsed in his corner, his legs giving way beneath him. The severity of the injury became clear, as Watson was rushed to the hospital with a severe brain injury. But what made the situation worse was the slow response from medical teams. No paramedics were there to administer immediate care. By the time Watson reached the hospital, critical minutes had been lost. Multiple surgeries followed to remove a blood clot from his brain, but the damage was done. Watson was left with life-altering injuries, paralysis, and a long, painful road to partial recovery. For Eubank, the victory felt hollow. The brutal truth was that he had won the fight, but the cost was far greater than any championship belt. He carried the guilt with him every single day, The killer instinct that had defined him as a fighter, the drive that pushed him to the top of the boxing world, seemed to vanish. Watson, however, wasn't ready to give up. He fought back, slowly but surely, reclaiming pieces of his life, defying all odds. In 2003, Watson completed the impossible. He ran the London Marathon, taking 6 days to finish, a testament to his incredible willpower. But there was still unfinished business. The wounds of that fateful night lingered for both men. 30 years later, Chris Eubank and Michael Watson would meet again. This time it wasn't in the ring. It was in front of cameras, in a moment of healing that neither man could have imagined back in 1991. Eubank, visibly shaken, confronted the pain he had carried for 3 decades. He apologized, deeply, from his heart.
I can't tell you how sorry.
Watson, with grace and wisdom, reassured him. "You shouldn't feel guilty," he said. "We move on with life." It was a moment of profound healing, not just for Watson, but for Eubank as well. A reminder of how so fragile life can be, how resilience can carry us through, and how true strength lies in forgiveness. The echoes of that tragic night didn't just end there. On March 26, 2016, at Wembley Arena, Chris Eubank Jr. found himself in a similar position as his father, stepping into the ring with Nick Blackwell, a tough, relentless fighter willing to endure anything to win. But as Eubank Jr. landed punishing uppercuts, his father, sitting ringside, couldn't ignore the haunting memories of that fateful fight with Watson. He rushed into the ring, urging his son to focus on Blackwell's body rather than his head.
Well, you're not going to take him out to the face, you're going to take him out to the body. Okay?
Eubank Sr. knew too well what could happen if the fight continued down a dangerous path. His urgency wasn't just about coaching, it was about redemption. Eubank Sr. couldn't let his son make the same mistakes and carry the same burden of guilt. Eventually, the fight was stopped on medical grounds, with Blackwell suffering severe injuries. He was rushed to the hospital and, like Watson, spent a week in a medically induced coma due to a bleeding on his brain. Thankfully, quicker medical intervention saved his life. Blackwell's boxing career was over, but his survival was nothing short of a miracle. In 2016, Blackwell faced another crisis. He was rushed to the hospital after sparring, suffering from a bleeding brain. This time, doctors had to remove part of his skull to save his life. It was a grim reminder of how close Eubank Jr. had come to living the same nightmare his father had experienced. Chris Eubank Sr.'s journey to forgiveness has been long and filled with emotional scars. His reunion with Michael Watson, along with the heart-wrenching memories of his son's fight with Blackwell, serves as a reminder that boxing is more than just a sport. It's about respect, forgiveness, redemption. In a powerful twist, Nick Blackwell and Michael Watson would later meet, a beautiful symbol of the unbreakable bond forged through suffering. This is the true legacy of these men, warriors in the ring, but human beings first. And in the end, it's not the punches that define them, but the strength they showed in rising above the brutality of the sport and healing the wounds that lingered far beyond the ring. As it stands today, Chris Eubank Sr. stands with humility of purpose, a family man, with his sons and daughter by his side. His legacy's built, not just in the ring, but in guiding the next generation to spread their wings of love. Michael Watson, too, has found peace in the fight, living with might day after day, though he had expressed how rebuilding his life after a violent carjacking in 2017 has been tougher than all his fights put together. From the depths of his struggle, he's risen once more, a symbol of strength with a future to explore. In the end, all 4 men, the Eubanks, Watson, and Blackwell, found a way to heal. Not just physically, but emotionally, connecting through the brutality and beauty of boxing. What do you think about this emotion-filled story? Let us know in the comments below. With that being said, thanks for watching. Please subscribe, like, and hit that notification button, and I will see you in the next video.